Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Priyanka Neela Krishnan Show. This is Enterprise Security Series, episode 48. And today's topic, the safest record is the one you deleted. Welcome to the show, and this is the show for the people who defend organizations and want the truth about where that data risk actually comes from. My standing note first. This is my independent commentary, my own views not tied to any employer, product, or vendor. Today, we are talking about a security control almost nobody thinks of as one. Deletion. We have been trained for 20 years to treat all data as an asset, to collect it all, keep it forever because storage is cheap. And for a lot of your data, that instinct is quietly building a liability that only pays off for an attacker. Over the next 15 minutes, I want to change how you think about the data you keep and convince you that the safest record your organization holds is often the one it had the discipline to throw away. Let us get into it. There is a file somewhere in your organization right now created for a project that ended years ago, holding real customer data and that no one has opened since, and no one will ever open again. It delivers zero value. And the day you get breached, it becomes a liability, a fine, a notification letter, a line in a lawsuit. So think about the consequences of having something which adds zero value and is part of a lawsuit. We have been trained to treat all data as an asset. Some of it is genuinely, a lot of it is the opposite. This episode is about the security control almost nobody thinks of as one. That is deletion. And once again, I am Priyanka Neela Krishnan, and let us talk about the data you should not be keeping. Let me challenge a belief that runs deep in every organization, that data is always an asset. We built the last 2 decades on to collect it all, store everything. You never know when it will be useful. And for some data, that is true. But for the vast majority, it simply is not. Data has a shelf life. There is a point after which a given record will almost certainly never be accessed again. And past that point, that specific point, the honest way to describe it is not asset. It is a liability after a certain point of time. Think about what an old, unused record actually does for you. It sits in storage that you pay for. It falls under compliance regimes that you must satisfy. And it expands the pile of sensitive information an attacker can steal in a breach. That is 3 categories of cost and 0 categories of value. You are in effect carrying inventory that only loses money and only adds risk. The instinct to keep everything felt free when storage was cheap. But storage was never the real cost. The real cost is security and labor and compliance and the breach exposure that grows with every record you refuse to let go of. So the question for any piece of aging data is brutally simple. Can the business actually extract value from this? If the answer is no, then keeping it is not caution. It is accumulating liability and calling it prudence. Here are the 2 mindsets side by side. On the left is the old instinct, and it is still the default in most organizations. Collect it all. Data is pure upside. So keep everything forever because someday, somehow, it might be useful. Storage is cheap, the thinking goes. So why not just hold on to it? Whereas on the right is the discipline that mature organizations are moving toward. Data is a liability with a shelf life. You keep what has a genuine current purpose and you delete what does not. Because you understand a simple equation. The pile of data you keep is the pile of data you can lose. Every record is that pile. In that specific pile is something an attacker can steal, a regulator can fine you over, and a customer can be harmed by. The shift from left column to the right is not about becoming stingy with data. It is about basically growing up about what data actually costs. The left column treats deletion as loss, but whereas the right column treats deletion as risk reduction. That is a big difference. Loss versus risk reduction. And once you see it that way, the old instinct starts to look less like prudence and more like a hoarder's justification. The most secure version of any sensitive record is the one that no longer exists because it cannot be stolen, leaked, or subpoenaed. Let me explain this concrete with a real case because it shows the cost of over retention in dollars. A vision benefits provider suffered a breach when attackers accessed a single email account. That account contained emails going back 6 years, many of them holding sensitive personal and health information about patients. The New York Attorney General went after them, and a central part of the case was the state's data minimization mandate. The regulator's argument was direct. It was unreasonable to leave personal information sitting in that email account for up to 6 years instead of moving it somewhere secure or simply deleting the old messages. The settlement included a $600,000 penalty and a long list of ongoing obligations. Now, think about what actually caused that penalty. It was not the sophistication of the attack, it was the retention. If those old emails had been deleted on any reasonable schedule, the breach would have been exposed a fraction of the data, and the minimization claim would have had nothing to stand on. The company paid a real price in cash and in oversight for keeping data it had no reason to keep. That is the pattern regulators are increasingly enforcing. Over retention is not a neutral choice anymore. It is a finding waiting to happen, and the breach is just the trigger that reveals it. And let me add the AI angle here too, because it makes minimization more urgent and not less. Teams are now feeding old data into AI systems on the theory that more data is always better. But redundant, obsolete, and trivial data does not just sit there harmlessly waiting to be useful. It degrades the quality of anything you build on it. It introduces stale and wrong information, and it drags sensitive records into places you never intended. So, minimization is not the enemy of your AI ambitions. It is a prerequisite for them. Clean, purposeful, well-governed data is what good AI runs on. The hoard is not an asset for the AI era. It is a ballast and it is risk. And the sooner you shed it, the better your position on every front. Two numbers that shows the size and the momentum of this problem. First, industry analysis consistently finds that somewhere between 30 and 50% of the data organizations store is what practitioners call ROT, redundant, obsolete, or trivial. Redundant means duplicated across systems. Obsolete means outdated and no longer accurate or useful. And trivial means it never had value in the first place. So on average, roughly a third to half of everything you are storing and protecting and paying for delivers no business value whatsoever. It is pure liability. Second, enterprise data is doubling roughly every 2 years. So this is not a static pile you can clean up once and forget. It is a compounding one. Every cycle you do nothing, the hoard grows, the attack surface also grows, and the cost of eventually dealing with it grows as well. Put those two numbers together and the picture is stark. A large and growing share of your data is worthless to you and valuable only to an attacker. And most organizations have no systematic way to find it and remove it because deletion has never been anyone's job. Everyone is measured on what they build and collect. Nobody is measured on what they responsibly threw away. That has to change because the math is running against you every single day. You keep collecting and never disposing. So here is the reframe. Deletion is a security control. Say that out loud in your next planning meeting, that deletion is security control, and watch people pause. Because we almost never think of it that way. We think of security as things we add. Tools, monitors, controls. But removing data you do not need is one of the most powerful risk reductions available. And it works in advance. Every record you responsibly delete today is a record that cannot be in tomorrow's breach. You cannot lose what you no longer keep. Data minimization shrinks the blast radius of every future incident before the incident ever happens. And it is astonishingly cheap compared to almost anything else in your program because you're not buying a new capability, you are simply removing liability you were paying to hold. The reason nobody does it is not cost, it is ownership. Collecting data has 1,000 owners. Deleting it has none. So, digital debris accumulates by default forever unless someone makes disposition an actual funded and staffed function. The organizations that get this right treat defensible deletion the way they treat backups or patching. A routine-owned continuous discipline. Not a heroic one-time cleanup, but a standing process that keeps the hoard from every building back up. Fund it, staff it, measure it. Because the safest record your organization holds is the one it had the discipline to delete. 3 moves to start on Monday. First, find the ROT. You do not need to read every file. Use the metadata you already have. Last access data, last modified data, owner, and sensitivity. Data that has not been touched in years but carries a sensitive payload is your first and highest valuable target for review and disposal. That single query surfaces an enormous amount of pure liability. Second, set retention that actually deletes. Here's the trap most organizations fall into. They write a retention policy, file it, and feel compliant, but the policy never actually triggers a deletion. A retention policy that only describes how long you could keep data without ever removing it is a filing system, not a control. Automate the expiry so data leaves on schedule, and of course, respect legal holds so anything under litigation is preserved. Third, tie deletion to identity lifecycle events. When someone leaves the company or changes roles, that is the moment to review the data connected to them. Old content still linked to access that should have been revoked is one of the most common and most dangerous forms of digital debris. Notice these three connect deletion to things you already track: metadata, policy, and identity events. You're not inventing a new program from scratch. You're wiring disposal into the systems you already run. Let me close with the trade you are actually making. So it is impossible to unsay. Storage is cheap. That has been the excuse for keeping everything for 20 years, and on its own, it is true. But storage was never the real cost. The breach is the real cost. The fine is the real cost. The notification letters, the lawsuit, the loss of customer trust, and those are all the real cost. And every one of them scales with how much data you kept. So when you weigh whether to hold on to that old data set, that archive nobody opens, that 6 years of emails, you're not weighing a small storage bill against a maybe useful someday upside. You're weighing near zero value against real compounding liability. Framed honestly, the decision is easy. The record that delivers no value and creates all the risk should not survive your next cleanup, and neither should the reflexive excuse for keeping it. I'm not telling you to be reckless with data you actually need. Keep what has a purpose and protect it well. But be honest about how much of your estate has no purpose at all. That data is not an asset waiting to pay off. It is a liability waiting for a breach. Delete it, and you have made your organization safer, cheaper, and more defensible. All with the same single act: deletion. That is a rare thing in security, so use it. This is the source slide from where I got all my reference for this presentation. I'll give you a brief second for you to quickly glance through. Alright, this was episode 48. The line to carry: storage is simple, but the breach is not, and every record you keep past its usefulness is pure liability waiting for a bad day. Deletion is a security control. Fund it, staff it, and measure it like one. If this was useful, please do subscribe and send it to whoever owns records or data retention, because this is a shared job. Tell me in the comments what share of your data you think is redundant, obsolete, or trivial. Then go measure it, because the real number tends to surprise people. Alright, this is me, Priyanka Neela Krishnan, and this has been my independent commentary on enterprise data security, and I'll see you in the next one. Until then, stay safe, stay protected, be happy. Bye, everybody.